Hello, and welcome back to another encouraging, inspiring, and including episode of the Achieving Unity Leadership System weekly podcast. It's a dialogue where we help turn complexity into execution, chaos into connection, and our purposes into action. I am your host, Mark Intrican, founder of the Achieving Unity Leadership System, available at www.achievingunity.com, which is dedicated to all leaders, personally and professionally, in improving their lives, their family life, and their business life. We must remember that unity is not a soft skill. It is a leadership discipline. Unity, like leadership, is not emotional. It is intentional. Today, I'm excited to welcome Keith Renninson to the Achieving Unity Leadership System podcast. Keith is passionate about helping people to live through greater purpose, resilience, and confidence. Through his work, he encourages people to continue growing, regardless of age or circumstance, and discover that their greatest potential may still be ahead of them. Our conversation today is titled Freedom is Not Doing It Alone. And Keith has a great example of this in a few minutes. Keith will introduce us to his TRIP, T-R-I-P framework: tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose. Together, we will explore how these four ideas strengthen leadership, teamwork, and personal growth. As you listen, I invite you to think about your own journey and share your questions in the comments or connect with us later. But first, before we dive into this insightful dialogue, let me briefly introduce my company, Reality Focused Dynamics, where it all began. You see on the first screen, it talks about achieving unity. It talks about the real conversations, true conversations for leaders navigating division, frustration, and change. Next slide. Renee, are you there? Uh-oh. Renee? She may have lost connection. There she goes. Connectivity. That's one of the things about leadership. We know that technology drives so much of what we do. Leadership sometimes, as we see, feels harder than it should. Disconnection is growing, sometimes with technology, but mostly within ourselves, between people. Frustration is draining us, draining the people, draining the teams. Good intentions are colliding with real world pressures. Unity, again, is not a soft skill. It is a leadership strategy as well as a discipline. What we mean by achieving unity: encouraging progress without enabling dysfunction. We want to make sure that we understand what each other is saying and just keep nodding our head if we don't understand, because we need to be inspiring action without forcing agreement. We need to be including those voices while maintaining accountability. We will be building better businesses, better lives, and a better world, one conversation at a time. I am your host, Mark Intrican, founder of Reality Focused Dynamics and Achieving Unity Leadership System. I work with leaders, teams, and families navigating conflict, change, complexity, and helping them move forward with clarity, with unity, and sustainable action. As I talk about sustainable, let's go to the next slide and find out what focused really is. Focused is the F, to facilitate tough conversations that build trust. And it builds trust on common ground and shared purpose. It's for us to be clear, communication and agreements in what we do. It's for us to be unified, action across differences as we are sustainable, results that last. And we have execution that's consistent responsible action to provide the delivery that inspired growth and lasting change. That's focused, FOCUSED, and that's also how you can reach me. Call me at 303 Focused, 303 362 8733. So please contact us as we promote clear, unified, sustainable action starting now. Reach out to explore our coaching, our courses, our workshop, speaking engagements, and promoting unity leadership. Achieving unity is the path to stronger relationships, inspired leadership, and lasting change. In today's world of uncertainty, unity is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And you can reach us at leadership@achievingunity.com. Upcoming conversations. Again, this is a weekly podcast, and we hope you put this on your calendar. If you're watching this after time for the recording on YouTube, glad to have you here. Again, we'll come back every week. We'll be here. Next week, Dr. Skeena Webb, I say on 7/22 is when she's coming, for personal freedom and leadership responsibility. Then Louis Swart, the next week on 7/29, July 29th, freedom without direction versus freedom with purpose. More great continuing comments to talk about. Then Dr. Tank Naing, preparing the next generation. What's coming up in the next few years, next few decades? Let's talk about that more. And then Daniel Aaron here for the second week in August on spiritual leadership. Come talk to us. Be a great conversation, more to hear, more to work with. And here's my QR code. Please, if you got a camera handy, if you got your phone ready, take a picture. Get in contact with me. Let's talk. Let's converse. We said every success begins one conversation at a time. And here for our host today. If you'd like to learn more about Keith Renninson, that's the QR code on the left. You want to learn more about connecting with Keith? That's your QR code on the right. You can also get to with him on YouTube at Achieving Aging with Keith, and his email, keith@keithrenninson.com. So take a picture of the screen, get in touch with Keith. You'll find out why in just a few minutes. And here's a little bit of the why right now. We're very excited to welcome Keith Renninson today, a speaker, a coach, and creator of the TRIP framework, TRIP, who helps individuals and organizations strengthen their leadership, their teamwork, and personal growth through the principles of tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose. Drawing on a lifetime of experience, Keith provides practical strategies for overcoming challenges, navigating change, and building resilient purpose-driven teams. His work empowers people to develop the mindset and the habits needed to achieve meaningful, lasting success. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Keith Renninson. Hey, Keith, how are you today?
I'm good, Mark, and you?
Doing wonderful. I am so glad that you are here. This is going to be an exciting time to talk about you and what you do and the things that you've done in life, the encounters that you've seen that I'm looking forward to you telling us about today. So if you don't mind, could you take a minute and just introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about you, what you're doing, where you are today, and then we'll dive deeper into that later.
Okay. I don't know how far back in history we want to go. I'll just give you the thumbnail sketch. At 78 years old, there's a lot of history, which is just fine. Uh, that's what it's all about, right? The longer we
It
can make
is.
it. My dad made it to 97, and I'm hoping to hang in
Wow.
there just like he did.
Oh,
Anyway,
yes.
yes, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm
Thank
a,
you
a
for your
former
service.
certified financial planner. I've written 3 books, and I was a professional public speaker for a long time. A lot of things have kind of come and gone during my lifetime. I have shiny object syndrome, and I also have a high level of security of curiosity. And so a lot of things will come into my purview, and suddenly I'm off and running on something new, down another brand new rabbit hole. So the trip system came about probably about 10 years ago, when I was working with another speaker, and we were trying to figure out how I could pull it all together. And we played with a lot of words, and trip was the end result. And it has given me clarity and focus and purpose to be able to narrow in and focus. As I'm going to use focus as a word a lot today because you do it as well. Without focus, we have nothing. We are scattered. We're scatterbrained. We don't really have intention in clear in our picture. And what I learned when I started to develop the trip system was that a lot of people didn't know what tenacity was. A lot of people had thought of the word grit, and they thought of that as being tenacious. And when you look it up in the dictionary, they are synonymous. But there is an
Hmm.
awful lot about what I like to do and how I do things that just encompasses tenacity. Today, I'm working hard on my active aging with Keith YouTube channel, which I'm having an awful lot of fun with. It's turning into a storytelling uh, channel where I share a lot of stories and a lot of experiences that I've had during my lifetime and how it all relates to Trip. I didn't think of those things back when they occurred oftentimes, but I can certainly draw them forward and use them today using the Trip system. So it's been a life-changing thing at my age to be able to give me something that I can really sink my teeth into and have a lot of fun with, meet people, help people, and move them along. So I
Well,
think that probably brings you up to date.
that's a lot of great information, Keith. Thank you so much. And can you tell me what's your biggest current goal right now or priority? And is there anything exciting or new? You say you're getting into a lot of the new things, depending what's coming up, those shiny objects. Any new territory you're exploring right now?
Definitely. You probably remember from our Toastmaster days how I used to talk about being involved in car racing years ago. And it went away for me for quite a while. And then about 2019, an old Porsche Club buddy contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm doing a really fun job that you might enjoy. Would you like to look at something new?" And I said, "Sure, what's up?" So now here I am 7 years later, and I am a corner worker and corner marshal for Formula One racing, IndyCar
Wow.
racing, and Sports Car Club of America racing. So I've got the second best seat in the house, sitting about 6 inches from a racetrack, waving my yellow flag or my green flag or whatever, and helping the drivers be safe because they look to us for communication, focused communication that enables them to be able to know what's coming up on the track so that they can be prepared. Is it a green track? Can they go at speed? Is there an accident? Is there a car on the track or off the track? That's the kind of communication that I put out for them to be able to see. And that's become my biggest thing. The neat part about this is I get to travel. I went to Melbourne, Australia, Mexico City, I've been this year individually, I've been to Miami, Long Beach, Arlington, Texas, and I'm headed to Austin, Texas here shortly for another race. And they're all the big
Wow.
F1s and IndyCar races. And it's a lot of fun. And at my age, I can't race anymore. I wish I could. I just don't have the reflexes I used to have. But I can at least be involved heavily this way.
That is exciting. Tell me just quickly, what's it like? Like you said, you're on the corner of a racetrack, and how fast are these cars going?
Well, let me give you a short story then. I was in Miami and I got the privilege of being on turn one. And for anybody who follows IndyCar or Formula One, you know that they all start on the straight and then they roar to turn one where they have to generally make a hard right hand turn. And I was hanging out the little window that we get for the corner workers, holding on to my yellow flag, ready to be able to throw it if I needed to. And I watched 22 cars come straight at me at 200 miles an hour.
Wow.
And then they all brake hard, they downshift, and then 22 of them try to crowd into a space made for three, and they all try to make the corner. Well, they didn't all make the corner. Three of them spun right where I was at, and so out goes my yellow flag, waving it so the people behind them could tell that, yep, there was something that was going on, and they all could be careful and get around it. But it's a very exhilarating thing to exist in that atmosphere. Normally, there's four or five of us on the corner. We all have different jobs, communications, the light panel, the flags. It's all very orchestrated, and we've practiced it a lot, and we all work as a unit. And so we're right back into unity and clarity are big with us, let me tell you.
As you can see that, because like you're saying, facilitate on clear, unified, sustainable execution and delivery. And that's what you pull through there. That is exciting because you have to think first about those drivers. And you've got to have that flag out to tell them almost second to your own well-being, right?
Yes. Yeah, and if a car, we're standing behind these cement barriers that you see on highways that they're go for miles. Those kinds of barriers are what keep us from the car, and there's a chain link fence above the barrier. And we
Okay.
look out through a window that's 3 foot by 2 foot. That's all we've got to be able to stick the flags out. And we generally have headphones on so we can tell what's going on. So it can be very dangerous in the fact that those barriers can actually be moved. So if a car would hit it at 200 miles an hour, it's going to move it right into me.
Right.
So you have to be prepared to be able to jump out of the way while you're waving a flag and listening to direction. It can be
That's
very spooky, I guess is a good word for it.
that would be. And as you're mentioning, you got to be able to wave that flag as best you can for as long as you can. And if that barrier is moving towards you with a car that's going 200 plus miles an hour, that tenacity that you have, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it really gets the adrenaline going.
I can only imagine. Okay, well, we talked about the racetrack, but this next story that I'm going to ask you about now is going to be something I think will intrigue many, many people. And I know it's a bit of a longer story, but I love, and I heard it several times in Toastmasters and brought chills to my spine almost every time. But can you take us back to that moment when you were in the Himalayas of Nepal, when you found yourself genuinely lost and alone, and kind of help us understand what was going through your mind, what you felt, and what you were forced to draw on inside yourself to find your way back, to find your way out of there.
Sure. Uh, the book came about because I kept a journal every day. Excuse me, which is something I still do, a gratitude journal, and I journal about my activities. I write down stories every day that I can use on my YouTube channel. And Nepal was a very unique situation. I had been there uh, in 1993 with a friend, and we trekked together with two porters. And in 1995, I decided to go back and go by myself. And when I landed in Kathmandu, I found out that my trekking permit for the base camp at Mount Everest had been canceled due to heavy
Ooh.
snowstorms. They had received about 4 feet of snow over the previous 4 or 5 days, and they were experiencing a lot of avalanches, and so they wouldn't allow trekkers to go back in there. So I had to completely redesign my trek on the fly. And I chose a mountain called Kenchenjunga, which is in the northeastern corner of the country. It's the third highest in Nepal. And I took a short airplane ride from Kathmandu to Bhaktapur, where I hopped on a bus and rode a bus for 3 days back into the foothills and then ultimately the mountains of the Himalayas. And it was one of those bus rides where you see on YouTube every once in a while where it's a sheer drop off for 2 or 3 thousand feet, and the buses have to cross and pass each other on those roads. I found out why they're all brightly painted. It's because they scrape as they go by each other so much that they have to paint them all the time to cover up all the scraping. So I get to Cavalli, which is the end of the third day, which is a stagecoach stop, if you will, in the middle of nowhere. I spend the night there and I begin my trek the next day. And within probably the next 4 hours, I was lost. It didn't take much time at all because unfortunately, the route from Cavalli to Kanchenjunga was in a lower elevation. So I was still in jungle conditions. And if you can imagine walking along a path that I was told to start on, and then coming to a Y in the path in the jungle, which direction do you take? How do you
I'm
know?
not
You
sure in a
don't.
situation like that you want the road less traveled.
I actually wanted the road more traveled.
Yes, that's what I was
But
thinking.
yeah, I there was a little child that was headed to school. He had some books with him, and he was walking in front of me for the longest time. And so I kind of knew that I was at least on a trail that people were on because I didn't see anybody for quite a while. And he got to playing hide and seek with me, which was a lot of fun. But all of a sudden, he had to turn off to the right and join other children to go to this little small schoolhouse. And then I was at my own wits again. So what I finally decided was I had a compass with me. I knew where I was supposed to go, so I pointed it in the right direction. And if the trail split, I took to the trail that went up in elevation because I knew I was going to be gaining elevation all day long. And that worked a lot. And when I did actually happen upon people, I would ask them if they knew where, if I was going on the right trail for Top Lejeune. That was the next town I was supposed to get to. So I'd point and say Top Lejeune, and I'd shake, and they'd all nod, yes, yes. They couldn't understand a word I was saying. They're just nodding and smiling. So um, what ultimately happened was I was headed to a town, and I was walking around the town. It took me 4 days of being lost
4 days.
before I could actually. I was sitting on the top of a ridge in an afternoon on the afternoon of the fourth day. I looked down the valley on the right and I couldn't see any buildings or homes. I looked down the valley to my left. I couldn't see anything again. I just had a trail ahead of me. And I leaned back against a tree and I actually started to fall asleep. And I had been told that this area was a little bit dangerous and I needed to be careful. And I heard footsteps coming up the trail behind me. And there was three men coming up the trail carrying what looked like gardening implements. I really wasn't sure what they were carrying, but they didn't look like they were going to be nice guys. So I closed my eyes and I thought, well, maybe I'll talk to God and maybe he'll just have them walk on by me and leave me alone. But they stopped and they tapped me on the shoulder and they said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "You speak English." And they all laughed and they got me to Top Lejeune the next day. And I was so close the whole time, but I was completely off the beaten path. So that was a that was 4 days that have a whole bunch of stories, all of them their own. But it was a strange time in my life to be out there all by myself. I only had a case of Cliff Bars with me. That was all the food I had.
Wow.
And so I had to take water from streams and put iodine tablets in it. Remember, this is 1995 before we had good backpacking filtration systems.
Right.
And I got sick, got a lot of bugs in me.
Oh my gosh. That's so tough. That story it's amazing in so many ways. But I think there's also a story about staying overnight. How did you find places to stay overnight? Four
Yeah, the
days, you
first
said.
night, was walking along the trail and I noticed that there was a little hut off to the side, and a dog came out and started barking at me, and then a little boy come running out after the dog, and in the Himalayas, when a family dies out and their home is empty and it's not going to be reused, if there's not a regional school in the area, they turn those into the schoolhouses. And then all the
Hmm.
children in the valleys around will attend that school. And this little boy had attended one of those schools and he spoke not a lot of English, but enough that we could communicate. And so he went back and told his parents that I was lost. Could I spend the night on their front porch or something? And he came back to me and he said, "Yes, my parents would love to give you a dinner and have you spend the night with us, and you can sleep in our hut, and we'll help you out, get you started the next day." And so I did. I went in, I had dinner with the family. The father was so impressed and proud of his son because he could translate. And for him to see an educated son was so cool. His wife was the typical Nepali wife where they don't have the support of the husband much. They're second-class citizens over there, or at least they were in 95. Things may have changed a
Right.
little more now. And when they were done eating, and they said, well, he'll take you out to show you where you can sleep. And he took me around behind their hut, and there was a lean-to. And he says, you can see you can sleep here. And I looked, and he had put straw down next to a great big water buffalo. And he says, he's very warm.
That's
So
what
I,
this little boy is telling you.
yes. So I laid my sleeping bag out on the straw. The bull looked at me. I looked at the bull as I climbed in, and he was as wary of me, I think, as I was of him. And he's chewing his cud, and he was kind of had a lot of bugs on him because bugs love to live on those bulls, which I was afraid I was going to end up with them on me. And overnight, I did have quite a few crawling on me. But it was one of those things where when I closed my eyes and looked up, I saw the stars of the Nepalese night, so clear, so beautiful. And I thought, I am the luckiest guy on the planet. Here I am. Yeah, I'm lost, but people have taken me in. They fed me. They've given me a place to sleep. You know, I just have to be grateful for what I've got and see what tomorrow brings.
Wow. I love that story. That is amazing to think you're again in Nepal and different language. You're in their language in a lot of ways. And that boy had learned that they think enough of education that they turn those homes when people leave them into a school so that they can teach these things. That whole aura of what you saw and what you went through is amazing. Have you found that maybe there's something uniquely, what you call clarifying about a genuine survival situation like you were in, where all the noise of everyday life falls away and you're only left with what is truly essential?
All you have left is your thoughts. I've been a fairly spiritual person most of my life, and so I talk to God a lot, still today. I do thousands of miles on my bicycle, and I do a lot of skiing, and both of those activities are a place that I can talk to God all day long. And that's what I found I fell back on while I was lost. That plus, I had a lot of memories pop up about my life, a lot of situations where I was having to push through difficulties, like basic training in the Army or Vietnam or things of that nature. And it was the clarity of prayer that entered my life during these 4 days was rather amazing. My thoughts were very clear. I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones in 95 to that extent. There was very little internet. It was there, but it wasn't much. So there wasn't anything I could entertain myself with, or I had my camera and I took a lot of pictures, but I had the only person that I really could talk to was God, and so he and I had lots of conversation, and
That's great.
there was there was something sustainable about that for me that kept me pushing through each day. One thing I should probably share quickly is that I ended up after that first day with 24 blisters on my feet. I was in
24?
I was in jungle conditions and I had high altitude boots, and my feet got sweaty and they started rubbing, and I had 12 on one foot and 12 on the other. They form between your toes or on your heels, on the ball of your foot. They form all over the place. And so I had to make sure that that didn't get infected. So I had, remember methylate?
Yes.
That stuff that stings when you put it on. I had methylate and bandages. And so several times during the day, I would stop and bandage my feet so that I could keep going. Hiking
Because it
long
would hurt when you were
distances with,
walking, right?
yeah, on a very rocky trail. So it wasn't smooth, it wasn't even, and it was always uphill. So, but does that answer your question as to what I did while I was there? You know,
There's so much. I'm going to bet there's another 1,000 stories that you could tell us as well. But when I think about your book and Trip, TRIP, emerging from that seems to be more of the book itself about Trip is more of a radical clarity of what you learned and what you saw more than the theory or a business book because you saw
The
some
four,
things. Go ahead.
yeah, the four words really started to make their way into my psyche when I was on the plane ride home because I was working on my journal and writing about what I'd experienced, and I kept noticing the four words were starting to show up. And the last one that came was imagination. And that one didn't come until I'd been home for quite a while. And because I really didn't come up with the trip system right away. I wrote the book in 95. I didn't publish it till 2018. It sat on a
Wow.
shelf. But when I became a public speaker and everybody said you need a book, I thought, okay, well, I got a manuscript. I'll go dig it out and rework it. And so it was the four words became a philosophy. They became a way of me living my life. Because as I examined my life, I noticed that I was a very tenacious individual and I did bounce back quickly from adversity. The imagination didn't come until much later, but purpose showed up right away because I had decided that I was going to leave my financial planning practice when I got to a certain age, which I did. And then I needed to find a new purpose. And public speaking with you at Toastmasters and ultimately the National Speakers Association in the Colorado chapter. And that all gave me purpose to be able to learn how to help people get through the things that they were struggling with. And having been in business a long time and a volunteer of a lot of organizations, I knew about leadership skills and I knew the things that helped people either lead or follow because we're not all built to be leaders, but we can all follow well if we have that clarity that needs to come with instruction and guidance. And I think that that unity that comes out of especially volunteering, when you volunteer, you're trying to do your best for a cause oftentimes. And that unity that comes out of working towards a cause is very powerful. It's very motivational. It makes you feel good about yourself, which
Mhm.
self-love is a big part of this. People have to learn how to love themselves so that they can do the sustainable work that you've talked about so that you can end up with the results that you're after.
Reach those goals. That's so true. And as you talk about your special situation, and probably would you say that most people will never get lost in Nepal, and that's probably a good thing. But the kind of pressure, that uncertainty, and that burnout that prompted your second solo trip to the Himalayas is something that maybe a lot of people do experience right now, just maybe in a different landscape.
Yeah, I think that mine was midlife crisis. I was 48 years old when I went over on the second trip. And I think I had reached that point in time in life where I was really examining who I was and where I was going. And did I like me? Did I like me? Did I like what I was doing? Did I like my friends? It was a lot of self-examination going on, and an awful lot of that was happening while I was lost too. It helped me come home with that clarity of a better, clear path forward to be able to build the rest of my life. Because at 48, you're not very old. Of course, now I'm 78. It was a long time ago.
It's a long time
Uh,
ago.
but but those 30 years in the in between have my my depth of stories and experiences has just multiplied many times over because of that curiosity that I can't seem to subdue. I keep getting involved with more things, but it's that um, drive that comes out of that that keeps me going. And I think a lot of people just need to find that in themselves. You retire and you sit on a couch, you're going to be dead in 5 years. You got to get out and find purpose and help people and move on.
And don't a lot of people, though, have that purpose? And it's one of the things that I talk about also is they have the purpose, they have the knowledge, but making that first step, because as we talked about focus, facilitate on clear, unified, sustainable execution and delivery. When I talk about focus, It's facilitate on clear, unified steps. Focus, facilitate on clear, unified steps. And so a lot of people have the knowledge, have the ability in many ways, but taking that next, possibly first step, isn't that a challenge for a lot of people?
Oh, yeah, I think the first step is always the hardest, but there's one other one that's equally as difficult that you just said, the delivery. You can come up with the idea and you can get motivated enough to take that first step, but once you've taken it, how do you deliver it? What do you deliver? What are you giving? How are you giving it? There's a lot of littler steps that follow the big one. And being focused is what organization is all about. Organizations need leaders that help set up a pathway, if you will, for people that can help them get where they need to go. I had, throughout my lifetime, I've had 3 or 4 mentors, and they seem to really guide me and help me get to where I wanted to go. I would encourage people who are retired to become mentors because without that knowledge that for a younger person, they don't know where to go and how to do it. So I think that mentoring is a big deal with a lot of that.
I think you're right. And that's a great point. How did you go from surviving that experience to realizing that what pulled you through the trip, the tenacity, that resilience, that imagination, and that purpose was not just a personal survival story, but it was that framework that you've taken and you've helped other people tackle their own version of being lost.
If you look at writing fiction, authors learn that there is an arc to the character where they climb the arc and they're struggling and they're pushing and they're biting and clawing their way to the top. And then they get to the top and something happens that enables them then to achieve what they're after going down the other side of the arc. And that has a lot to do with how people should view their life. We are all on that arc in different places on the arc. We're all experiencing different things as we all try to grow and to achieve and to be dynamic and become the person that ultimately we enjoy being. And because a lot of times when we start out in life, I don't think we really know enough about who we are or where we're going to feel comfortable with all of that. But it happens over time. I tell everybody don't give up, never give up,
Never
keep
give up.
pushing, you'll get there eventually.
As long as you're committed and accountability, that responsibility, that respect to take it forward, right?
Yeah. Yeah, respect is a big deal. You got to respect yourself and the people around you. And oftentimes it's respecting a leader for the choices they make that maybe we don't understand. Comes back to the communication you spoke of when you opened everything up today. Finding that unity of communication and
Yeah.
understanding, because I can say one thing, what I think is very clear, but another person's going to hear it with a different set of ears,
Hmm.
and that becomes an obstacle in and of itself.
And it's not a negative or anything, but it's a different base. It's their what they learn, their culture.
I
It's going to be
agree.
different. And how we take that forward. Well, as we talk about that, can you help us understand tenacity a little bit better? That T in trip, as you define it, because it seems like a lot of people think of it, as you're just saying, as gritting your teeth and pushing through, when your work suggests it is something more optimistic and more sustainable than that.
It is optimistic. I'm an optimistic guy, so
You
it
are.
it fit perfectly into my framework, into my personality. Although there were times in my life, especially when I started my insurance practice before I became a financial planner, those were hard years. The first 4 or 5 years of being sales in insurance are exceedingly difficult because you're trying to sell to all your friends
It is.
and they don't want to buy more insurance. But you really have to push through that until you start to find ways to meet other people. And tenacity is a philosophy for me. It's a way to get up in the morning, to feel good about the day. I instantly, as soon as I open my eyes in the morning, I tell myself I intend to be happy, healthy, strong, and wise. And I thank God for another day. I don't know if you knew it or not, and this is sort of a side story, but last year I had 3 heart attacks.
3.
And yeah,
I think I know of one of them.
and two of them happened while I was on my way to Winter Park for a day of skiing and working at the resort. So I was going over Berthoud Pass, and I had a heart attack.
I
And
didn't know you had two. I think that's the one I knew about. I didn't know you had
yeah,
two.
two more occurred on other days. I sold my father's house in January after the first heart attack, and I had another one the day that we were packing up everything and loading a truck. And so anyway, I ended up with 2 stints in August and 4 more in October. And then I was back skiing and riding my bicycle in November and December. So well, there is the example of how I view tenacity. It's a matter of adapting.
And taking it
Tenacity,
forward.
yes. If you can adapt to the difficult circumstances and see the light at the end of the tunnel on the other side, you can push through and you can make it to the other side. But you've got to have faith and trust in God and in whatever you believe in that you can pull it off and
Believe
that
in
you can
yourself,
move
right?
forward. Yes, yes. And that belief in yourself is paramount because we all have to have confidence in what we're doing, right? But we have to adjust our path as time goes on. If, like with mine, I suddenly had a heart attack, I lost a whole year of not being able to ride my bike or do anything physical until they could get everything kind of organized to figure out what to do about me. And with medications and the stents, my cardiologist basically brought me back from my deathbed to
Mhm.
an active, very active life and a new YouTube channel.
And isn't that part of the R in resilience that you talk about in TRIP? Less about
Yeah,
bouncing back to where you were and more about bouncing forward into something
definitely.
stronger. And you found that people who handle adversity best are not the ones who avoid it, but the ones who have built that practice around recovering from it.
Yeah, you have to embrace it and say, okay, well, you have your company, Reality Dynamics. It's reality. You have to accept reality for what it is and then bend it to make it fit whatever it is you're trying to strive for.
And define what that reality is. Reality focused. And
Yeah.
be take that reality, be focused on it, and then create those dynamics, that dynamite, to take it forward where we want to go. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it
So
can be done, and you're an example of it. And that's probably why you named your company that way, because that's the philosophy you're living by, and it's paying dividends for you and how your life is turning out.
no, thank you. Thank you. And luckily we've known each other for many years and I've seen the leader that you are through Toastmasters. So it's awesome to listen to your story and what you've done. But if you would help me understand now that role of imagination in TRIP in a business or leadership context, because it seems like creative thinking is one of the first things that shuts down for a lot of people when they're under pressure. And yet it seems to be exactly what's needed most in many of these moments.
Yeah, expanding imagination when you're in crisis mode is not easy because it's asking you oftentimes to, well, I have a saying at the bottom of my email, and it's a saying I use at the end of my YouTube videos. Everything you desire is just outside your comfort zone. And that's what
Everything you
imagination's all
desire
about.
is just outside your comfort zone. Okay, go ahead.
That to me is the description of imagination because you suddenly are being forced outside your comfort zone to imagine something different. And you have to be able to allow yourself to look at the full spectrum of ideas. So if you're in a leadership position and you've got people that have very focused ideas, you need to get them to expand them. So the focus becomes broader and more ideas get thrown out until you reach the level of absurdity. Because sometimes imagination has to get absolutely crazy before something good pops up. And when it does, then that's the nugget. That's the thing you latch onto as a leader. And you say, whoa, Billy Joe, that's a good one right there. What do you think, Susie? I think that's a can we make this happen? Can we massage that? Can we use our imagination? to creatively make something we want come to life out of what you just came up with. Boom.
Boom. That's wonderful because I think that leads right into it. And that's how you put the word together, the trip, TRIP. Let's walk through purpose, the P. Actually does what it does for a person's ability to lead, that purpose, to persist, because it seems like purpose is not just motivation, a motivational word, but a genuinely functional tool that determines whether someone stays in the game when everything else is telling them to quit.
Let's go way back into time. Thomas Edison. How many times did he invent the light bulb before he got the successful one? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of light bulbs before one worked. He had a purpose. He knew what would come out of it if he stuck with it. His imagination kept reinventing the light bulb constantly until he came up with the great uh, science, if you will, that worked. That's no different today than it was back then. Which, when you think about it, the light bulb hasn't been around that long, 100 years maybe. And before that, we just we had candles. Well, somebody he had to have a light bulb, no pun intended, that said, "Okay, cool, we got to come up with something different because we're burning everybody's house down."
That's
Um,
right.
so yeah, it
Uh,
was one of those things where purpose drives the nail home. You could bang on a nail all day long, but if you don't have purpose behind it, it's going to bend, it's going to break, it's not going to be functional, it's going to fall apart. And teamwork around purpose is so important. Everybody needs to be on board with it, with their unity. That's where your unity comes in, is teamwork really is about unity of thought, unity of direction, unity of drive. When I was in the army, I I was a lowly private, but
we
I
all
was
have to
part of a,
start at that, right?
yeah, but I was part of a huge team. We all were doing the same, working towards the same goal, even though we were all marching in unison. We were working in unison. There was a lot of guys that didn't like what was going on, and so they'd get angry, they'd get upset, and the drill sergeants would have to bring them back into line and get them going. It's one of those things where purpose is it's part of the philosophy of trip that grounds everything, I think, because it gives you a foundation to be able to keep returning to. If you have failure, return back to the purpose, return back to the idea that started it all, and then go at it again with tenacity, resilience, and imagination. But it always comes back to purpose. And I think the purpose is what holds it all together.
I like what you're saying with that too, because as I hear you talk about it, Keith, would you say that trip is not a destination? It's not a badge you earn once and then carry it forever, but it actually is that daily practice of that purpose, the way strength training is a practice, and that the four elements need to be exercised consistently to stay strong.
Yeah, definitely. I've ridden my bicycle for many years and raced it for a while, and I've done a lot of the mountains through Colorado. As you know, we've got a ride here that's called the Triple Bypass, and it starts in Evergreen and it ends up in Vail, 120 miles and 10,000 feet of climbing through the Rockies. And um, that 1 day event requires all forms of trip because you have to be tenacious at pushing through the pain. You have to be resilient to get back on the bike after you've stopped and rested a little while. You got to do it all over again. You've got to have imagination to be able to think about other things rather than your pain while you're there so that you can not even think about it after a while. And the purpose obviously is to get to the end and go through all kinds of weather and all kinds of conditions and all kinds of other riders. There's all kinds of things that make you pull trip together when you're on a bicycle ride like that. And I often think that a lot of the things that I've done in my life have really encompassed the whole foundation of trip without my even knowing it until I looked back on it. And then suddenly it showed itself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that whole story that you have to talk about how I would hate to be lost in Nepal. There's no doubt about it. but what you pulled from that time when you were lost, and that belief that you had in yourself, the reasons to take that forward. It's another story, another book in itself.
Yeah, you've got to be honest with yourself and not lie to yourself. You know, if you're in true awful danger, you need to be really cautious and take care of yourself. But I really felt like I was going to be okay. Was that foolish thinking? No, I don't think so. I think it was just confidence in myself that I was going to make it. I just didn't know how. And the how is oftentimes the thing that comes last. And for me, the how was three guys coming up a path to help me out.
What brought them there? That is so true. Yeah. So as you talk about that, would you say that unity, as we both talked about today, is the belief that we lead best when we do encourage, inspire, and include the people that are around us? Is actually one of the maybe a natural outcome of a team that is strong across all four of your trip elements? Because people who are tenacious, resilient, imaginative, and purposeful tend to lift each other rather than compete with each other.
Yeah, you know, competition's an interesting word, isn't it? Because teams oftentimes have some people that push harder and some people that don't push as hard. And so, do you help the people that don't push as hard develop the competitive nature to lift themselves up with everybody else? How do you go about getting that person motivated? And what is it that turns them on so that they can do the things you want them to do and be an integral part of the team? Because being part of the team is so satisfying, but some people don't always see it that way. They kind of buck the system, they push against it with many different ways. And I think that you have that logo that's on the screen next to you, and you have solutions at the bottom. And that's really, it's a solution in and of itself to be able to pull people up and give them confidence in themselves so they can aid the rest of the team in pushing everything forward. So I love your logo. I think it's got really
Thank you.
cool stuff in it.
Thank you. And I think you said so much about it. When you talk about success focused solutions, you had success in your mind and you became focused on those solutions to take forward, to get away, to get found for when you were lost, right?
Yeah, I had no choice. But the same token, I could laugh about it today. I
Today.
wasn't laughing when I was sitting on that side of the road in Nepal. I was concerned. You know, I was completely out of food. I had about a half of a water bottle left, and I hadn't been near a stream in a while. I had the iodine tablets. I had other things, but I was getting hungry. I was extremely exhausted, and my feet were killing me. Now you have to remember, and I didn't mention this earlier. I had 60 pounds on my back in my backpack because I had
Wow.
gone to be able to take photographs. So I had two tripods, I had two camera bodies, I had 100 rolls of film because that was before digital. I had all that camera equipment on my back. So 60 pounds,
60 pounds.
I weighed it before I left Colorado to see what it weighed. And it was 60 pounds, which just brought me back to my days of being in the army and carrying a backpack. You know, I knew I could do it because I had already done it. It was just a matter of pushing through and recognizing this was going to be the game for a month.
Yeah, that's true. And you did very well with it. We only have about 6 minutes left, 5 minutes left. Maybe you could tell us just a little bit about your YouTube channel, Active Aging with Keith. The phrase is like
Yeah,
active aging, feel like a philosophy in two words.
yeah, it started out with life hacks for seniors with Keith. And life hacks didn't cut it. So my imagination kicked in and I had to change the name. And active aging was really the crux of what I was trying to help people do because I was talking a lot about how to ride a bike and kinds of equipment to use on your bike and kinds of things to do in the gym and nutrition and all that. And so it really kind of centered on a number of things that were um, kind of broader than what I was doing, but I wanted it to be more focused, as you say. And so active aging really boiled it all down to just two words. And that's what I'm trying to help people with is even though I'm 78, well, here, let me tell you this. Um, Last weekend, when I was out at the car races for the Sports Car Club of America, there were two guys that were racing that were 77 and 79,
that were
still
racing,
racing. Yes. And boy, were they fast. One was in a Corvette and one was in a Monte Carlo. And they were bumper to tail all the time. They would pass each other and then they'd go around the course and I'd find out, oh, there's another one leading. There's another one leading. Those guys just did not want to give up. And they were having so much fun at this age. You got to look at that and go, wow, how cool is that? Right? They're actively aging and still doing the things they love.
it's
And
beautiful.
that's the kind of philosophy I want to be able to kind of pull through with my YouTube channel. I'm going to record one this afternoon after we get off here about a day that I spent skiing at Winter Park and how found a young man on the slope. Well, I won't give all the details away. People can check in and watch it. But yeah, it's a funny story about a young man from Texas.
Okay, again, we got about 3 minutes left as we bring this conversation to a close. Again, how do we get to your YouTube channel?
It's active aging with Keith. So you just
Active
put a little
Aging
at
Keith.
sign in front of that, Active Aging with Keith. And my email address is keith@keithrenninson.com, which is my website and has a lot of stuff on it. You kind of mentioned in the introduction that I still had my trip technique. I'm revising it, and so it's taken down right now. I don't have it up
Okay.
active right now, but I
All
hope
right.
to have it before the end of the year, have it back up and functioning again. And that's a place where people can go take an actual assessment and see where they are strong in trip and where they are weak.
That's excellent. I hope you do get that back up soon. It's awesome what you're doing, what you're going with. That is beautiful, Keith. I mean, I'll say we got just only a couple of minutes left, but thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your willingness to share your experiences and that those practical lessons behind your trip framework. Your reminder that leadership grows through tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose fits perfectly with our mission of achieving unity. When we bring our strengths together, we accomplish far more than we ever could alone. So I hope everyone listening found one idea that they can put into practice for themselves today. Small steps often create life's biggest challenges. Keith, before we say goodbye, would you leave us with one memorable thought our audience can carry with them throughout this week?
We've already mentioned it. Everything you desire is just outside your comfort zone. Never give up.
Everything, everything we desire is just outside our comfort zone. That's beautiful. And that's what we need to think about each and every day. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad that is something that you're sharing with us so that we will take it going forward. That's just awesome. So in today's conversation, to me, one thing always becomes clear. Real change happens when people come together with purpose, and like Keith, when that vision meets action. So I hope you took a picture of the slide earlier in the podcast with Keith's QR code. If not, this full podcast will be available on YouTube at Mark Intrican before the close of business on Friday. So be ready for you to enjoy on Saturday morning. So you can watch this video as you enjoy your morning beverage. So as Achieving Unity continues to resonate with you, follow that feeling. Reach out and connect with me at www.achievingunity.com, www.markintrican.com, or call me 303-362-8733, which I hope you'll always remember is 303 focused on your phone keypad. Thank you all, and thank you, Keith, for your message and for helping us understand that tenacity starts the journey. Purpose gives it meaning, personally and professionally. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Keith. I'm glad you were here.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
It is a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Until next week, this is Mark Intrican with the Achieving Unity Leadership System, reminding you that life is truly what we make it. Let us help everyone around us feel seen, heard, and supported in everyday moments that truly matter and make life awesome together in unity. Hope to see you all again next week with our next step in remembering unity is not a soft skill. It is a leadership discipline, and you are a leader. Till next week, thank you all. Thank you, Keith. Cheers.